Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, man. So you got me juiced up over here. It is baseball playoff time in the house, and I'm representing for anybody out there who doesn't know who is my favorite team. Houston Astros, homie. They are the best team ever created in the history of the world. I don't care what anybody says. If you're a Braves fan, if you're a Dodgers fan, or especially if you are a Yankees fan, I know a couple Yankees fans out there. Anyways, man, we here for chess, though. So, side note, let's get to some chess. We do have the U.S. Championship going on. So, I went ahead and grabbed the first round game between Awonder Liang and Wesley. So we are going to see who is Malakas. And, it wasn't the longest game, but it actually has quite a bit that I could feed off of and kind of show. So I'm pretty happy about that. So, of course, all my people in the Philippines, I would say mabuhay to you. Kamusta na aking magkaibigan. Masaya ko makikinig muling. Maraming salamat po sa nanonood ng aking mga video. Hello ulit, magandang umaga, magandang hapon. It just hit afternoon for y'all. So I appreciate you guys coming by. But if you guys are ready to go, man, let's take a look and see what we have for this game. So we got the move E4, E5, knight to F3. We got knight to C6, knight to C3. Knight to F6. And we do have the four knights game, and it immediately goes into the Scotch variation of that. And I think this is actually something that Magnus Carlsen himself kind of plays a little bit. He kind of tosses it around, playing. It's one of the well-known openings in the game of chess. So we do see the pawn taking on D4 and then knight taking D4. And then we do have the move bishop to B4, which is going to be by far one of the most aggressive ways to play as black. Now, if we back up, though, we got knight to C3, knight to F6. We have the four knights setup that we had before. Now, the absolute main move in this position is going to be bishop to B5. It is not the absolute best move, but it is the most heavily played move. Man, sorry, guys. Just got done eating. Okay, forgive me. So we do have bishop to b5, most heavily played. But, if you don't want to pretty much get into what we saw in the actual game, which is bishop to b4, I mean, you always have the ability to go a3 here and just prevent that altogether. But like I said, we did have bishop to b4. And in this particular position, e4 is just a little sad and lonely, though, this one here. Because, I mean, this bishop is pinning this knight down. So, I mean, this pawn is kind of like on pre, as we say. So, before we do anything, we got knight taking c6. And, of course, we don't want to follow that up with knight taking e4, taking advantage of the pin, because then you will see bye-bye queen. So, we do see b taking c6 right there. And then we do see the move bishop to d3. And I mean, you kind of force white to play this way. Like when you go into the Scotch, you kind of, if bishop b4 does come, you kind of have to go this way because, I mean, you can't just be giving up pawns in the center of the board, homie. So, I mean, we can't be doing that, bro. So we do see the move castles. And, even though something I wanted to show you guys, it does look a little bit strange. I think from a human perspective, this might be a weird continuation. But this, if let's say, for example, the bishop does take on c3, taking advantage of the fact that the knight is pinned at the moment. We see this here, pawn taking c3, castles, castles. It is saying that this is really, really great for white. Now, the thing about it is, I mean, you do kind of have some open files for the rooks and bishops and things like that. But, I mean, I just think for me personally, I mean, this is just a really, really gigantically horrible pawn structure for white that I definitely, even if it was a little bit better, I would not want to go into this, bro. But anyway, I just thought that was interesting when I took a look at it. But we do see castles by white. We got d5 attacking in the center, trying to see if we can get rid of some of our own weaknesses because, we want to get the bishop out, but then we also kind of have this little pawn chunk right here. And at the moment, white doesn't have any damages going on. We do see bishop to d2. We got bishop taking c3, bishop taking c3, and then a pawn taking e4. And it might look kind of suspect because you're like, wait a minute, man. Like, I can't take this back. Like, am I just going to be down a pawn? Well, the first thing you throw in is an intermezzo Zwischenzug move. Bishop takes f6. And this does ask a major question to this queen. Like, what does it want to do? So we do see queen taking f6, bishop taking e4, queen taking b2, bishop taking c6. We do see rook over to b8, and then rook goes to b1. And we're kind of in a Hoover situation right now. You know, the queen doesn't really have anywhere good that she can go because this rook is undefended behind her. So we just say, hey, man, we're going to get into some trades. Queen takes b1, queen takes b1, rook takes b1, rook takes b1. And then we do see rook over to d8. And we're basically telling white, if you move your rook, son, it is back rank, mate. Let's shake hands and go home. So, you know, white is like, I'm not going to do that, bro. So we do see bishop coming back to f3, just defending that d1 square so that we can move our rook. We got the king over to f8. Rook goes up to b8. We see rook over to e8, renewing the back rank threat. We do see the move h4, just creating some lift. You know, kind of do it how you want to do. h3, h2. You know, king wouldn't have been able to come over to f1 because of bishop to a6 with check, discovering an attack on that undefended rook on b8, so we can't go over there. Bishop does come to a6, and then we do see the novelty of the game, which is rook down to b4. We do have same color bishops. We have the same amount of pawns, so if we trade rooks, that kind of throws away all of our, you know, winning chances for either side. So if you don't want to draw the game, you're going to go ahead and hold on to the rooks. So the rook does come down to e1 with check. We do see king up to h2. We got the rook up to e5, and then we do see rook over to a4. And this is kind of an interesting position that you find yourself in. This bishop is attacked, but more importantly, if you move the bishop somewhere, you have this pawn behind that's attacked. And the thing about it is, you know, that will possibly make you be up a pawn as white, and it might be winning enough. So if you want to go ahead and pause the video right here and see what move Wesley So plays in this position to try to get out of the craziness, go ahead and do so. All right, cool. So the thing about it is this. I always talk to you guys all the time about, you know, situations when you are attacked, right? Now, when you move your piece that is attacked, if you have to move it, right, you always want to be thinking of where you can place the piece that's going to give you the biggest bang for your buck. Like, where are you going to be able to put your piece where you're doing some attacking? You don't want to just, like, lazily move a piece away. You want to, you know, kind of put it with a little bit of punch. So that you have really kind of two options in this position. You kind of have a third option, but it really is not very desirable. It is either going rook up to e6 and trying to laterally defend this bishop so you don't have to move it, or moving the bishop. Now, the move that we found in the game, that Wesley So found in the game, it is by far the absolute best move in the position, and that is bishop down to e2. You're basically telling white, if he does want to attack that pawn, you are going to have a situation where you are going to be taking this bishop with a little bit of like oomph, right? You know, because let's say, for example, the rook takes on a7, because you're like, bro, I want a pawn, right? The bishop is going to take here, and then you're going to have pawn taking here, and then rook going over to c5. And the problem is, I mean, you have a really, really ugly pawn structure over here. You know, this is not the absolute best position that you could be in. So that is what black is going to be strapping you with if you do want to go ahead and go pawn grubbing, right? So what we have is like I said, rook to a4, and then we have bishop to e2. And Awonder Liang, understanding all of this structural damage he can get, he is literally in a situation where he decides to go king to g3. So he says, hey, man, I'm not going to grab the pawn right now. I can grab the pawn at some point later. But I'm going to go ahead and move my king over, because then if the bishop takes, I can take back with my king. And that is exactly what we see in the game. Bishop takes f3, king takes f3, and then we do see the rook over to c5. Because you have to kind of make this move, because if white is going to be snapping a pawn, you got to kind of be snapping a pawn to keep things even. So we do see that rook takes a7, rook to c3 with check first. And then once the king moves, we do see rook to c2 with check, which is a really nice demonstration of kind of what you should be doing. Because, I mean, sometimes it's better to place a check and then take some material, especially if it's going to come with another check. So you kind of keep, you know, the person kind of dancing around a little bit. So we do see the king going up to e3. And you see that the situation is almost identical, except that white does not have the same damage that it had in the other variation. So you got to be kind of careful when you're just grabbing pawns. So we do see the move h5. We got g3. We got king to e7. We got the move a4. We got the move g6. And then what we see in the game, I'm going to come back to this position. But what we see in the game is rook to a8. We got rook to c3 with check, king to e4. We got rook down to c2, attacking on the 7th rank this nice f2 square, which is almost always relevant the entire game. The king goes back down to e3 to defend. We got rook to c3 with check. We got king to e4, rook back to c2. King goes back to e3, and then we do have a draw by threefold repetition in this position. Now, I think a lot of people out there are looking at the position like, I mean, I got a pass pawn. Like, there's a lot of activity going on. Like, why would you just check back and forth? Like, why wouldn't you just try to win the game? Like, I think a majority of people out there are looking at the position like, man, this looks like it could be winning for one of the sides. Like, it doesn't even look like a draw. Well, the crazy thing is it's an absolute dead draw, but it is not completely obvious as to why it is a complete dead draw. So I will give you a variation, and I will show you basically what each side is thinking about as far as if they were to actually go and play this on, it would become a draw. So going back to what we had in the position, we had the move a4, we had the move g6, and then we had the move rook to a8, right? So let's say, for example, we didn't make the move. So you pretty much see what happens with rook to a8. I mean, you have a lot of different options in this situation, but to show you guys a different view, let's say, for example, you as white, you understand that you have this pass pawn over here, right? So, I mean, what do pass pawns need to be? They must be pushed, right? Cool. So you would see the move a5 if you want to go that route. The king would come down to d6. You would see the move a6. Rook would go to a2. You have to kind of, make sure that that pawn isn't going to promote at some point, right? So rook going up to a8, and you would see the move c5, and then you got the move a7. So you pretty much done everything you need to do to push the pawns. Now, like I said, you can either check back and forth, like, at any point in the situation, or to, like I said, to demonstrate, what else could kind of go on if you're thinking, like, I could just play on and we can, like, win or whatever, like, right? Okay. The king would come to c7. The first thing that you have to understand about the situation is the fact that this king does have the ability to go over and help this rook attack this extra pawn that you do have. So at some point, you're going to have to move your rook out of the way, because once this king hits this square, you literally can't live on a8 anymore. You have to move away. So basically, you are going to have to do that pretty immediately. So the rook would come over to f8. You would allow your pawn to be taken, but you're trading that pawn for another pawn. Rook would be taking a7, rook to f7 with check. And then we would have king to b6, rook takes a7, king takes a7. And then we would have a situation where the main thing about it is each side has equal pawns. But the major thing of the situation is if this pawn was over here somewhere, then black would be lost. They would be completely lost because white can just not, grab all their pawns up, and then they basically are pushing these pawns home, right? But the major thing is black has an outside pass pawn, and this white king cannot leave a certain area. And what we call that area is a square of the pawn. So basically, as it stands right now, this white king has to be able to step into this square with this pawn being on this exact square. And of course, if the pawn moved, right, the king would then have a new square of the pawn, and it would have to make sure that it can't move any further away than being able to take a step into this direction. Now, what I will do up in the top right-hand corner is I will leave a card to a video explaining the square of the pawn in a little bit more depth. It's not like a crazy deep, in-game technique, but it does take a little bit of understanding to kind of be able to visualize it. So that is what white is having to deal with. White would love to go over here and start snacking on these pawns, but the problem is it cannot leave a certain, area of the board. So as of right now, the king actually can't even move. Because let's say, for example, you make the absolute horrible mistake of going over here, which actually wouldn't be a mistake because it's still showing us a draw. Okay. Well, okay. So it would still be a draw in this particular case. But let's just say, for example, it was a situation where the king was down here a little bit more, right? And you have the ability to queen the pawn or something like that. You don't have, like, the situation going on, right? You moved over here. The pawn could push like this. And if you do not step back into the square, getting into the area like that, then you would be completely losing. So, of course, if you step further away, now you see that the game is completely over because the pawn is going to promote. It's too far away. The king's too far away. Okay. So you guys see what I'm trying to kind of get you to see. Okay, cool. So after this particular situation, we will probably see the move f3. The king could come to b6. The king would go to d3. King to go to c6. And then the king would come up to c4. And we are kind of stuck for the moment. So like I said, black can use this pawn as a deflection to be able to come over and scoop up these pawns. So if you kind of get an illustration as to what that looks like, you would see king over to d6. the move g4. You can see pawn taking h4, or pawn taking g4, pawn taking g4, and then the king would be abandoning that pawn. But like I said, the king does not have a lot of space to roam because he has to stay in a certain area of the board. So you would just probably be seeing the king taking on c5 immediately, and then after that, the king would go to f4. And I mean, you see your pawns are really vulnerable, right? So you have to kind of do something. So you would probably see h5. Pawn takes h5, pawn takes h5, and then the ability for the king to immediately step to the next, to the side of the pawn. And then after you push it, the king, and it's just going to be 2 kings on the board. And that is all she wrote. So that is kind of like a good way that I can kind of illustrate, you know, just maybe one of the possibilities they would have come to. But pretty much any avenue you would have chosen at that point can go into a complete draw. And this is pretty much why. So I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. Maraming salamat, aking makaibigan, and I'll see you guys next time.